Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about how to become a good listener. Learning how to be a good listener is an important skill to develop in business and in life. Being a good listener means you focus your attention on the person who is speaking rather than interrupting. Good listeners are fully present and listen more than they speak. Being a good listener means being curious and asking good questions. Being a good listener is also essential in helping you understand and empathize with others without passing judgment. Having good listening skills leads to stronger relationships, deeper engagement, and higher levels of gratitude. Learning how to be a good listener improves your connection and understanding of other people. Here are some tips to help you develop good listening skills. Be curious. To be a good listener, be curious about the other person. When you listen with curiosity, you learn more about and understand the other person on a deeper level. When you are curious, you are keen to ask questions. Asking good questions ensures you actively sit and listen to the other person. Being curious helps you use the answers and ask follow-up questions that go deeper. Keep quiet. To be a good listener, stay silent during a conversation when someone else is speaking. Good listeners hold the space and are quiet while the other person talks. The best listeners are people who ask good questions and then stop talking and start listening. Good listening means letting the other person think and speak without judgment and interruption. Be attentive. To be a good listener, be focused and attentive during the conversation. Good listeners are genuinely interested in the other person and what they have to say. When you are attentive, you listen rather than trying to jump in. Good listening helps the other person feel understood. Be present. To be a good listener, be fully present in the conversation. When you focus on the other person and understand the conversation is not about you, you become a better listener. When you are fully present with the other person, you actively listen and ask great questions. If the conversation shifts to being about you, the power of active listening is lost. Ask great questions. An effective way to listen well is to ask great questions. You become a better listener through the quality of your questions and the answers you receive. The ability to ask great questions starts with asking open-ended questions that you don't know the answer to. Asking open-ended questions gets the other person to think about their response and ensures you listen actively. Great listening questions often start with what, why, when, and how. Use their language. The correct language makes you a more active listener and ensures the speaker is being heard. When you respond and ask questions using the other person's language, it shows you have been actually listening. Mirroring the other person and using their body language enhances the listening experience. It also helps you ask better questions and capture their language. Make the person feel understood. To be a good listener, Ensure the other person feels heard and understood. Good listeners engages with what the other person says and wants to say. The best questions should be open-ended and allow the other person to express themselves. Open-ended questions allow the other person to talk about the things that are most important to them. Effective listening means making the other person feel understood. Active listeners also respond in the right way through positive body language and encouragement. Just listen. Good listeners understand that it is important to listen when someone else is speaking. Good listeners don't listen half-heartedly. They are fully active and engaged in conversation. They are focused on the other person and hold the space between them. To be a better listener, listen to what the other person is saying and ask open-ended questions that let the other person come up with solutions. A good listener focuses on developing their listening skills. They understand that being present and making the other person feel understood and heard is the key to a successful conversation. Good listening requires self-awareness and the ability to be attentive and listen hard. Good listeners always think about the other person. When you use active listening and ask great questions, your listening skills will transform. Create a comfortable setting and opportunity to have a conversation. The first to having a meaningful discussion with another person is to create an opportunity to have that discussion in a place you can both be comfortable. If you believe someone in your life is in need and trying to open up, offer them an opportunity to talk. Invite them out to get a drink. Offer to snag lunch. Go to a ball game. By offering, you have allowed yourself to be available to listen if they want to talk, and by choosing relaxing setting, there will be less pressure and stress on the conversation itself. And most importantly, after you offer an opportunity to talk, actually go and do it. Talk less, listen more. One of the most important parts of listening to be present in the conversation. Don't let your mind wander and be distracted. Focus on the now. Listen to what they are sharing and be willing to engage. For many of us, staying present in a conversation is hard, but we may not realize it. One of the most common difficulties with being present is that people thinking of what to say next. You will listen to the first part of what the person is sharing, then the rest of your mind is busy thinking about what you should say when they are finished. Or they share a personal problem with you and you immediately begin trying to think of a solution. This is not being present. This is not listening. It's easy to assume that what you say and contribute during a conversation is the most important, but that's not the case. Sometimes the most meaningful part of a conversation is letting the other person share and be heard. Remember, it's not about you. Be okay with silence. Silences can feel awkward, but they don't have to be. We often try to fill the discomfort that comes from silence with talking, but ultimately holds the conversation from getting any deeper or more meaningful. Silences allow people to think and gain insight about whatever is being discussed. It gives us a moment to digest new information and consider how it makes us feel. It also gives a chance for us to consider what to say next and questions to ask. It allows us to feel and be vulnerable. It's important to ask a question, then sit in silence for a minute or minutes while waiting for another person to respond. It leads to a deeper understanding between you and the other person you are talking to. Some of the meaningful conversations in life don't have a lot of talking. Be careful when sharing your personal experience. Be careful when sharing your personal experience. Sharing your own experience can sometimes be helpful in a tough conversation. It can help build a strong relationship through sharing an experience. Being vulnerable about your struggle can help validate that the person is not alone with their troubles. In some cases, your story can even provide alternative pathways and potential examples for how to improve their own situation. However, it's important not to offer solutions. Do not use your own vulnerability to prescribe how the other person should fix their problems. Do not say something like, "I've gone through something similar. Here is what I did. You should do that." Do not assume what works for you will work for them. Every person and every situation is different. What works for you may not work for them. Your job is to listen, not fix their problem. Also, when sharing, be sure to avoid making the conversation about you. Sharing your own story can be really helpful in some cases, but if you take over the conversation, you are not helping them. Do not stress about saying the right thing. Far too often we assume that the one hard conversation will be the last. We assume that we only have one shot to make the conversation meaningful to the other person. If we can't say the right thing at the right time, in the right way, something bad may happen. That's just not true. In fact, stressing about saying everything perfectly will take you out of the moment and make you a bad listener. Be present, listen, and honestly participate in the conversation. You don't have to be the hero of the conversation. There is more benefit to the other person in being heard and validated than any type of advice you could give. Besides, you can always talk more later. You always have another opportunity. There are no tidy conclusions in life. Same goes for conversations. Most of them are just the first step in a much richer, ongoing dialogue and a deeper relationship. Validate them for being vulnerable. Validate other people or the person you're talking to for being vulnerable. Open up to someone else is hard. Opening up to someone else is hard. It takes a lot to be vulnerable to another person. Sharing your feelings isn't weak. It's one of the bravest things a person can do. So let the other person know that. Thank them for opening up. Show appreciation that the person trusts you. This small act of acknowledging the other person's vulnerability can open the door to future conversations. An opportunity for you to ask them, how is it going? And have another enriching discussion. You will never find a solution to someone's problems in a single discussion. Treat every difficult conversation as the first step of support. Keep the eye contact. Looking everywhere except at the person talking can make it seem like you are not listening, and then the conversation suffers. So keep the eye contact. Focus your gaze at just one of the other person's eyes at a time. Keep that smartphone away. Browsing the internet on your phone or your computer while trying to listen usually leads missing some part of the conversation, and to the person talking feeling like he or she is not listened to. So put that phone down while listening if you don't need it to check something or write something down as part of the conversation. Ask instead of trying to mind read. Reading someone's mind is quite difficult. Most of the time, impossible. Still, so many of us have tried to do it and started conversations based on that too many times. So when you feel an impulse to assume and mind read, stop that and start being curious and ask open-ended questions. Going for this kind of conversation, instead of ones where the other person can just answer a yes or a no, will help him or her to open up and to start explaining and sharing what is going on. Get some fresh air and or exercise. Few things make it so hard to follow along in a conversation as a tired and foggy head. Two things that can keep that energy and mental clarity up are to open a window or to take a walk outside to get both some exercise and some fresh air. Exercising regularly, a bit more intensely, a few times a week, also makes it easier to fully be there when you want to and need to listen. Be honest about your current limitations. If you are in a rush or feel very tired or stressed out, let the other person know. If you have listened for a while and your mind has hit its limit and starts to wander and you need a break and maybe something to eat, say that too. It is better for the both of you to be honest and to continue the conversation later on, rather than trying to fake undivided attention or to try to keep the listening up when you honestly just can't. Share what you have done in a similar situation. When asked for advice while listening or when it seems appropriate, not when the other person just needs to vent and get things out. Share what you have done in the same situation or a similar one and what worked well for you. That gives a lot more weight to your input than just random advice or opinions about what you think could work. Keep an open mind. Listen without judging the other person or mentally criticizing the things she tells you or they tell you. If what they say alarms you, go ahead and feel alarmed, but don't say to yourself, wow, that was a stupid move. As soon as you indulge in judgmental bemusements, you have compromised your effectiveness as a listener. Listen without jumping to conclusions. Remember that the speaker is using language to present the thoughts and feelings inside her brain. You don't know what those thoughts and feelings are, and the only way you find out is by listening. Don't be a sentence grabber. Listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. Allow your mind to create a mental model of the information being communicated, whether a literal picture or an arrangement of abstract concepts. Your brain will do the necessary work if you stay focused, with senses fully alert. When listening for long stretches, concentrate on and remember keywords and phrases. When it's your turn to listen, don't spend the time planning what to say next. You can't rehearse and listen at the same time. Think only about what the other person is saying. Finally, concentrate on what is being said. Even if it bores you, if your thoughts start to wander, immediately force yourself to refocus. Try to feel what the speaker is feeling. If you feel sad when the person with whom you are talking expresses sadness, joyful when she expresses joy, fearful when she describes her fears, and convey those feelings through your facial expressions and words, then your effectiveness as a listener is assured. Empathy is the heart and soul of good listening. To experience empathy, you have to put yourself in the other person's place and allow yourself to feel what it is like to be them at that moment. That is not an easy thing to do. It takes energy and concentration, but it is generous and helpful thing to do, and it facilitates communication like nothing else does. Give the speaker regular feedback. Show that you understand where the speaker is coming from by reflecting the speaker's feelings. You must be thrilled. What a terrible ordeal for you. That's an example. I can see that you are confused. If the speaker's feelings are hidden or unclear, then occasionally paraphrase the content of the message, or just nod and show your understanding through appropriate facial expressions and an occasional well-timed or how. The idea is to give the speaker some proof that you are listening and that you are following their train of thought, not of indulging in your own fantasies while they talk to the other. In task situations, regardless of whether at work or home, always restate instructions and messages to be sure you understand correctly. Pay attention to what is not said, to non-verbal cues. If you exclude email, the majority of direct communication is probably non-verbal. We glean a great deal of information about each other without saying a word. Even over the telephone, you can learn almost as much about a person from the tone and cadence of their voice than from anything they say. When I talk to my best friends, it doesn't matter what we are chatting about. If I hear a little or a laughter in their voice, I feel reassured that she's doing well. Face to face with a person, you can detect enthusiasm, boredom, or irritation very quickly in the expression around the eyes, the set of the mouth, the slope of the shoulders. These are clues you can't ignore. When listening, remember that words convey only a fraction of the message. So you also have to summarize for at least 1 week at the end of every conversation in which information is exchanged. Conclude with a summary statement. In conversations that result in agreements about future obligations or activities, summarizing will not only ensure accurate follow-up or follow-through, it will feel perfectly natural. In conversations that do not include agreements, if summarizing feels awkward, just explain that you are doing it as an exercise. I hope you have been blessed, and I hope that you will be good listeners. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Locadia signing out.